Greetings everyone and welcome to round 2 of Recording with Audio with a brand new deck tech featuring Turbo Mysteria. Turbo relating of course to the fact that we want to cantrip through our deck to hit the 20 card threshold in order to activate the bonus effects from Burgeoning Genius and also Abyss Summoner. Mysteria because we are leaning on a lot of the Mysteria cards. Though most of the Mysteria cards we are focusing on, we're getting away from Mysteria proper and from Anne, focusing more on a board-centric strategy, using Miss Miranda almost like a Daria, and trying to flood the board in the mid-game if we can to get a tempo swing. Though some games you'll see we play very differently, we can also lean a little bit on Rooney. If not using it for card draw, we can get the Prophecy out to finish off some matchups. That's how we play our typical Rune late game, though not as typical as people would expect. Up, of course, against Blood for our first matchup.
My word is my bond.
Blood, we don't like them getting that early Flauros, but if we can control the board and run them out of cards in hand, we might be able to pull this one through. Right now we're at an okay life total. Obviously every game with Blood is measured in the number of Dark Feast bats it takes to kill you. And he's had lots of masochism effects, so.
It won't be long now.
That's the juggling match with Blood. Do you have control and will a Dark Feast bat kill you?
Anyone call for a super cute alchemist? This ends here. Now to trample all over you. Contemptible scum! Take your seats, boys and girls. See me open wide.
Love for the sake of the world.
Oh no! See me open wide for my Catalina. Try and stop me.
Embrace me.
Right on time, actually. I find Sleep Invocation to be a rather unique answer to Vera from Blood. We both stall a turn, and he actually doesn't get to swing with her. Sleep Invocation actually a lot stronger than I first anticipated. Much like my Do Nothing Forest, there's this aversion in a card game to cards that say do nothing for a turn. But that do nothing comes attached to a cantrip, which, in a turbo deck like this one, when we're trying to filter through our deck, do nothing for one turn. Not only does that buy you a turn, but it also gets you a card deeper and it spell boosts for you. So you can sit on removal in hand, and if you don't necessarily have the spell boost you need this turn, you can just hit the pause button and ramp it up a little bit.
The future is waiting for us. On my honor as class president.
Hurts that one Dark Feast bat can kill us, but I guess he didn't draw it, so got a little lucky this game.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
Holding on to that Ars Magna was really scary, not gaining a life, but we got out of it. And there's our Rooney. Rooney with the option to either draw us cards, as I said, getting into the Turbo archetype, or in some matchups, maybe even in this one sometimes, depending on who's going off first. You go for the Prophecy and put them on a late game clock. It's not as flashy or impressive as a Chimera or Anne's Revenge or the Invocation. But I find that the trade-off of having a much stronger board game to actually be rather rewarding.
Let us learn about magic.
Plus, a lot of decks are gonna, they see you with Rune, they're gonna put you on some big late game close, and you can sneak in some pretty impressive turns while they're, preparing for you to go for the big blowout.
Boys and girls?
All of a sudden, you show up on turn 6 or 7 with a huge board and lots of cards in hand. They're going to be scratching their heads because they don't know what you're playing.
Unbelievable. Take your seats, boys and girls. You're done for. I've still got it, don't you think? Oh no! No! Oh no!
This almost looks like a mirror match. So we have to wonder what subtle variation we're up against. Is this somebody else going for the 20? Or are we up against Mysteria? Are we up against Anne? Are we up against both? I guess you could feasibly do that.
I'll hold my blade at Mysteria.
But leaving Anne and Mysteria out of our deck is actually
Now to trample all over you.
very notable in that the deck seems to flow better when you're not trying to build it around, like with Mysteria, the spell damage. You know, just trying to cram enough spells to make use of that effect. You know, it's a neat effect. It's fun when it works, but deck order is something that can be the bane. That's where the variance from that deck comes from. We don't necessarily have the same board clearing options, but being that we're building a better board anyway, we don't necessarily need the AoEs with the bonus effect from Mysteria in order to survive. And quite frankly, we win a lot quicker. We win a lot better. And some of that's going to be because people aren't anticipating a board-centric rune deck, but even still, there's just a stronger precedent for winning with strong board play, especially when this deck can very sometimes play like Daria, in just how quickly you can drop a whole bunch of cheap stuff with reasonable sized stats. And this is Mysteria. So we are going for the flagship card. We do have to worry about Anne a little bit. But if he's playing Mysteria, we have to wonder how many effects is he going to get that are going to try to damage us direct to face. And he's got the worm out, so... Okay. And 2 missiles. His hand is just chock full of removal, all of it dealing damage to board and face. Let's just get the prophecy out here and put him on a clock that doesn't leave him any targets to use that removal on. We're actually going to eschew the board plan for once. But,
take your seats, boys and girls.
oddly enough, I think we're going to come out okay.
You little pest. I guess you're looking for a fight. Moonlight drives me mad.
I do want to point out that Class President Hannah and I think Fate's Hand also are a couple cards that I had in one of the earlier versions of this deck. The most recent version, the one that's posted, is one that I've cut those cards in favor of a couple of other things. I'm not sure exactly what, but things that help the deck flow better as opposed to just trying to hit certain power cards. Class President Hannah obviously better in the format now that there are lots more Mysteria things to use with her, but she's more for card generation, whereas the Turbo archetype wants us to dig. So Hannah just ended up being slow and clunky sometimes, and I found it better to leave her out. Fate's Hand obviously relying on spell boost, and that's great when it works. But being that we have an odd mix of spells and other things in this deck, it can be a little clunky sometimes, especially overdrawing us if we do get lots of spells, and not being useful if we don't draw enough. While we are using the Turbo archetype to hit that 20 card threshold, we are not solely built for that, so we have to find the cards that fit in the middle without pushing us to extremes. They are perfectly fine cards, and they may work in some versions of this if you find a balance that works for you, or if you just like those cards. But in the newest version, I've left those out, and that's reflected in the list.
Empower my blade.
That hurt!
this is a good example of where we're able to just zerg the board pretty well. I mean, turn 5, we got a full board with reasonable stats. That's going to be scary for Haven. He's 2 turns away now from a reasonable board wipe. And we're getting lots and lots of aggro on him. And here's a good example of the Wormist really coming through for us. It's real easy to go for the 6/5 worm that gives you a board clear spell in hand and damage to face. But I find that surprisingly often taking the 5/6 body is actually a lot tougher for decks to deal with and does a lot more for us in most games. Just being harder to clear off the board matters a lot.
Gonna reach the moon. I guess you're looking for a fight. The artifacts obey me.
Portal, another deck we have to worry about late game shenanigans with. We'll see which version he is and see if we can craft a game plan. Now we are certainly capable of racing him, but if the game goes long and he goes for the amulet plan, we could be in trouble.
Show me how much you worship me! Anyone call for a super cute alchemist? You're done for. Now to trample all over you.
This is a pretty good example of where I was talking about Miranda and Fate's hand really clogging our hand up here. It's one of the reasons why I ended up dropping them. It's too much card generation and card draw. You gotta find the right mix.
It won't be long now. The future is waiting for us.
The gears of fate still turn.
On my honor as class president.
Oh, not Miranda, but Hannah, excuse me. But you get the idea.
Next time will be different. I'll be your peace. Weapons, got you covered. Unbelievable!
Another interesting thing to point out here is just how much spot removal for us works as a pseudo AoE. Even though we're not running the traditional rune AoEs here, we're drawing through so many cards, and our removal is cheap enough that if we do end up in a situation where we're up against heavy boards, sometimes we can just one-for-one our way out of it and just keep on drawing.
Take your seats, boys and girls. On my honor as class president.
So he's obviously super paranoid about me dropping a Chimera or something on him for a massive chunk of damage. But he looks like classic Artifact Portal, actually. So I don't know if we're looking for some kind of Saphira beatdown. If he's just going to go for those with Storm. He's hitting his deck pretty hard though. Might come back to bite him.
Take your seats, boys and girls. This ends here.
The funny thing is he's not going to attrition our hand out. But it'd be interesting to see if he can keep stocking his deck well enough that he can actually out-deck us. He's hitting his deck really hard. Okay, there's something going back in.
This strength is for you.
An interesting back and forth in this match. Definitely not your typical portal deck. At least if it is, he's pitched the cards that I was most worried about and I just don't see them.
Oh no! Yo! Totally burns!
We're obviously not going to storm our way past a nilpotent entity, but we do want our board to be as big as possible so that he can't clear easily and do other things. If we can keep him preoccupied, we can keep him on his back foot.
Still.
Wow, he's not putting anything in his deck. He is hitting hard though.
Maybe this one? Oh, or this one?
There it is.
This is sadness. I guess you're looking for a fight.
Be slaughtered.
Bathe in the light of destruction.
Dragon's another one. We don't necessarily worry about big late game OTKs, but if he's running any number of storm followers against us, it can be virtually the same thing. It may take us down in chunks, but this game's going to come down to a late game storm follower. Unless he's PDK or some other odd variant, but I think Prophecy here is a pretty good call. We've got lots of card draw in hand, lots of ways to keep Spelldamage to get down. We're going to want to cast that at some point to put him on a clock that we can manage. This is one where normally the end game, you know, Chimera would be the bane of Dragon. God forbid he draws Zoe back. But Prophecy gives us something like that, even if we're not main decking the big end game blowout.
It won't be long now.
We're actually going to try and play in such a way that he's not as tipped off to us holding the Prophecy. It's not a huge tactical decision, but it is an important one. Put stuff on the board. Say we don't necessarily care about cards in hand right now. That's why we're not playing our draw spell. See if we can get him preoccupied while we do other things.
Prepare your soul. Dragons and sorcery are of the same kin. Still.
Nothing to see here, just spell boosting away. Oh, it's Jerva. Wow. Well, Prophecy just became a 2-turn clock if we can get it out.
Destruction for you.
And here the big threat is a Storm, or Zoe, and he didn't have it, so there we go.
Maybe this one? Oh,
Well, thank you all for joining us for our inaugural video and write-up for Turbo Mysteria. I enjoyed making it, and I look forward to seeing what you think in the comments.